Welcome to part 2 of the hardest unlockables in the Tekken franchise. And in this video, we're going to be talking about Tekken 5, DR, 6, Tag 2, 7, and Tekken 8. I know there's a couple games in between that kind of timeline like Tekken Revolution, but either they are completely unplayable or just not relevant enough to talk about. Be sure to check out part 1 if you want to look at the hardest unlockables for Tekken 1 up to Tekken 4. I also show the optimal settings you can input in the options tab so you can maximize the speed you obtain all your unlockables. But for my legacy viewers who watched the last video, just know from this point on there will unfortunately be no character change at continue from this point on. We're not going to be talking about vanilla Tekken 5. Now what I will say, starting with this game and going onward, customization begins to dominate traditional unlockables. This is kind of the last one of two games that has raw unlockables like this, and like I said, later on it's going to be almost impossible to not talk about customization. Tekken 5 is the last time we see the classic beat story battle to unlock certain character X amount of times. Now, the character that takes the longest to unlock, which is clearing story mode 9 times, is Heihachi. You can unlock the characters through time attack mode as well, but like with arcade mode, completely pointless, no reason to do it, and don't fucking do it. Random select also becomes unlocked the moment you unlock Heihachi. Why? I don't know. Now, the final character to unlock, Devil Jin, is a very interesting one when it comes to unlocking him, as you do not unlock him through clearing the story battle mode. The two ways you can unlock him is either A, fighting 200 matches, or completing the Devil Within minigame. Oh boy, this is one of the most insufferable experiences I ever had playing the Tekken franchise, and that is saying a lot. Definitely not the hardest, but most painful to go through. For those of you who don't know, Devil Within is a game mode where you are forced to play as Jin, and it is a brawler platformer where you are solving puzzles, mashing through waves of enemies, and fighting horribly balanced bosses. What makes this game mode so insufferable to play is its repetitiveness, horrible, and I mean horrible camera work, I don't know what you even call it, and just kind of repetitive and redundant. And trust me when I say the camera angle positioning in this game is absolutely atrocious, and I would highly recommend adjusting the settings to be as comfortable as possible for you, because trust me, the default settings are hideous. To get what we need, we're going to have to clear Devil Within, yes, the entire game, on medium or higher, which means play it on fucking medium. Do not play it on anything else. Trust me, you'll thank me later. We can't play it on easy mode because unfortunately we will not get the needed unlockables. But once you clear the entirety of Devil Within, assuming you did not do the 200 games of regular Tekken to unlock Devil Jin, you should unlock Devil Jin, Final Stage 1, Final Stage 2, and a million gold. You will also gain access to the ability to select stages and a cheat code where you can play as Devil Jin in Devil Within, which I will show the code here. To give you an idea, this took me about 5 to 6 hours to complete, mainly because I had no idea where the fuck I was going for a lot of it, and the boss fights were extremely annoying and you kind of have to cheese them to beat them. I don't want to talk about Devil Within too much because we would be here all fucking day, but some pro things I should let you know about is use R1, which is the camera lock, because the regular camera system is literally unplayable, especially when it comes to combat stuff. Also, if you miss some enemies that are locking you or something, that will help you lock onto them better. And trust me, for the boss fights, you're gonna really need that lock-in feature. Also, make sure to use certain button combinations like throws, 3+4, which is basically his cans with a lot of AoE, and 1-3, which is a 2-string launcher, which can give you some really nice juggles and can AoE launch people. Once you have cleared Devil Within on medium, we're going to have to play stage 4 one more time, unfortunately. Go to stage select, which should be unlocked after clearing Devil Within, and I would set it to medium just in case. I don't think this works on easy, but input the Devil Within code after selecting stage start or play, whatever the fuck it is, and you should be playing as Devil Jin in Devil Within if done correctly. Make it to 4-2, and the very first room after you clear the mobs, there should be a breakable wall where you press L1 and square to break it. Invisible platforms will appear. Get to the area and there should be an icon to walk into, which should unlock Starblade mode. You will unfortunately have to finish the entire level to confirm and secure the unlockable, otherwise you will not get it. You might be thinking, but can't you just play Star mode when the game boots up? Technically yes, but that is only a light, small version of Starblade. The full version is locked behind this Devil Within minigame, unfortunately. If you, God forbid, decide to play another Devil Within stage again, you will notice these red Jin logos floating throughout the level. And each stage has about 8 of them in each level. And the reward you get from collecting the logos is a specific cosmetic item that you would normally require to purchase. I accidentally grabbed one of these trying to get Starblade mode, and I got a cosmetic for Asuka. Now let's talk about Tekken 5 Dark Resurrection. Unfortunately, I was not able to find any way to play the PS3 version of this game, mainly because it was digital specifically. So you will be seeing the PSP equivalent of Dark Resurrection for gameplay footage, which makes it rather important that I talk about both versions, because when you go online, it is not clear as to what unlock is tied to what version of the game. Basically, every online website that talks about the unlockables acts like they're both the exact same game, when in reality, they're really not when it comes to content. For the PS3 version, if you clear the arcade mode once, you will unlock Jinpachi, who is the most OP character in the game because he is in his boss form, and Main Man Sui has an excellent video showcasing how broken he is. But if you clear it 2 more times after that, you will unlock all of the original Tekken 5 stages. So it is absolutely worth clearing the arcade mode 3 times. And of course, do it with different characters so you can unlock as many endings as possible. If you have access to the PS3 version and know of unlockables that aren't talked about online, please let us know in the comments. Trust me, I've tried so many ways to get access to the PS3 online version, and emulation has become increasingly difficult thanks to a lot of companies being a lot more strict on emulation these days. So I appreciate you helping with spreading proper information. Surprisingly, the PSP version has a lot more unlockables and gets really weird and freaky compared to the PS3 version. Firstly, we have the issue of arcade mode and story mode being a thing in this situation. So we will be playing story mode, not arcade mode, similar to Tekken 4. And it has a similar unlock amount like in the PS3 version, where you will need to clear story mode 3 times. And doing this will basically unlock a bunch of mini games and cinematics. In terms of mini games, you will unlock command attack mode, which is basically do a series of attacks / combos in the shortest amount of time possible. The next is gold rush mode, and this is where the opponent is completely invincible and there's 30 seconds on the clock, and your goal is to survive that 30 seconds while getting as much gold as possible. The last mini game you will unlock, which is Tekken bowling mode after 3 wins, is what it is, Tekken bowling, and it is the absolute worst version of Tekken bowling you could possibly play. Thankfully, there is absolutely no reason to play this other than you just really don't like yourself. You can also unlock a couple cinematics by doing some specific things, particularly in the minigames. One of the unlocks is complete combo challenge mode in under a minute and 30 seconds 5 times. One of them is clear gold rush mode with 5,000 gold or more, but I did this multiple times and didn't get the unlock, so I'm not sure if this is relating to somewhere else. Again, a lot of these forum information websites are pretty misleading. And speaking of misleading, the last cinematic that you can unlock is tied to survival mode. And online it says beat survival mode, which doesn't make sense because survival mode doesn't end, but I believe it just wants you to finish a game of survival mode. So I believe theoretically you cannot beat anyone and still unlock it. I made it to a score of 9 and got the unlock, but it was also my first run, so I don't think the score necessarily matters. Now, this is where things get really, and I mean unbelievably sloppy when it comes to the misinformation, and it is almost insultingly bad at how misleading it is online. Before we even dip our toes into the world of Tekken Dojo, something that was extremely confusing right off the bat is that almost every online forum talking about the unlockables for Tekken 5 DR has a horrible time separating the unlocks from the PSP version to the PS3 version, and they act like they're the exact same game when in reality they are not at all. And even with the PSP version, they couldn't even tell you everything. It's almost like they didn't even fucking play the dojo mode. And it unfortunately forced me to play the dojo mode to get the correct answer. Now, what is Tekken Dojo mode? It is basically the long, grindy, fight a million people game mode that a lot of games from the 2000s had, because it was kind of difficult to make fighting game content outside of story mode. So a lot of games from this era had these kind of game modes that just made you monotonously grind or just kind of waste an entire day. And in this case, that was Tekken Dojo. You basically go through what are called dojos, and what you first do is fight in a league tournament where you will either fight 6 to 8 people depending on whether it's League B or A. After clearing a dojo session of 6 to 8 opponents, you will either go up and down in your ranking placement, and when you meet the qualifications for the tournament, you can enter it. Typically, you need to be in a top 8 to make it in a tournament. Once you win the tournament, you will ascend to the next dojo. I do believe you have to win the tournaments to make it far, or to the next dojo, but I have never got second place, so I would not know in that regard. And it's not that bad early on. It's pretty easy, especially in the lower dojos. And every time you clear one of these dojos, you will gain access to auras, which are these glows that orbit your character that also unfortunately remove all the cosmetics that you equip on your character, which is really unfortunate. The higher up you go in a dojo, the higher levels of aura you can unlock, which basically increases the intensity of the aura surrounding your character. Now online, there's only 3 of these auras mentioned. That is the Tempest, Life, and Burning aura. Now, when it comes to the Life and Tempest aura, they are technically correct, as you do have to play through the lower rank dojos. However, for the Burning aura, they say you have to clear time attack mode, and that is unbelievably wrong. You just have to play through the higher stage dojos. I'm not exactly sure where, but if you do clear up to the 5th dojo, which is the Void Dojo, you should have every max level aura unlocked. And if you're curious, the chronological order you unlock them in, including the levels 1 through 4, is the Tempest aura, which is white, the Life aura, which is green, Burning, which is, I believe, like a light orange / yellow, Raging, which is red, Dark, which is purple, and the final one, Aquatic, which is blue. Both the Tempest and Burning Aura for some reason do not have a 4th level. I'm not sure if they actually do, but I did not unlock any level 4 for them. So maybe I did something wrong, but there also just might not be one in general. There are 2 extremely important notes that I must address also when you are playing through Tekken Dojo mode. One is when you are playing through Dojo mode and the leagues or whenever, do not press select and start at the same time when the screen is black. This will take you to the main menu, which is a mistake I made countless times before I realized what the hell I was doing. This is because I was playing on an emulator and I was using the select button to skip through the loading screens because I just did not want to deal with the loading screens, and I ended up having to replay league matches multiple times, not realizing when the screen was black I was also mashing start to skip the intros and going back to the main menu. So I was confused until I figured out what the heck was going on there. But more importantly, I would tread extremely lightly playing on easy mode because you are locked to the 3rd dojo and cannot progress past that point. So if you want to play the entire dojo mode, you have to play on normal. And yes, near the very end, the final 2 dojos, it does get a little tricky, I will say that. Specifically when you are at the final dojo, which is the Heaven dojo. And for that dojo specifically, you have to unlock it by beating Jinpachi in the Void tournament. Now, one thing I will say is once you unlock the Heaven dojo, you really don't have to play it. I don't think there's any unlocks attached to it besides just trying to get your character to the max rank, which you would think originally is Dark Lord. However, if you were an absolute mad lad, which I am not, there is actually a secret final rank, which is called Divine Fist. And you achieve this secret rank by getting 3 characters to Dark Lord, and then you can promote one of them to the final rank that is Divine Fist. Now, just to give you an idea how long it takes to grind out to one of these characters to Dark Lord, I made it to the deity rank with about a couple hundred games, and I got a couple ranks to go before I am even there, and I didn't even make it that far to Dark Lord, so it's probably a couple dozen more games if I'm not mistaken to make it that far. But yeah, multiply that by 3 and God knows how long it takes once you have the requirements filled to get there. It is just an insane grind, and there isn't any unlockables attached to it, so you have no reason to go for it besides the flex, I guess, offline. Now we're moving on to Tekken 6. Now, Tekken 6 is somewhat strange when it comes to its unlockables, as there really isn't any for the base game besides pure customization. You can unlock the English and Japanese comic effects through beating scenario mode, which leads me into my next point. Pretty much any legit unlockable is going to be accessible via scenario campaign, which is basically the Tekken Force version of Tekken 6. If you want to play or unlock a specific character, you'll have to clear a specific stage. Some characters take much longer to get to, like Yoshimitsu or Devil Jin, for example, whereas others like Brian or Paul can be fought much earlier in the game. However, if there's a specific character you want, you can pick one free character at the very beginning. So if you're a Yoshi player, fear not, you can select him from the start right away, and you won't have to grind a crazy amount to gain access to him. Specific levels in Tekken 6 have to be unlocked via specific conditions, like the Nightmare Train stage and Keegan Island stage, which is Yoshi's level if you were curious. Train stage being Devil Jin's stage. I think the hardest one to unlock technically is the Nightmare Train stage, but it's kind of hard to say. They're all kind of similar in difficulty in my opinion. With all honesty, the most annoying thing, or most difficult I should say, to unlock is the auras, because they just cost millions of coins, which in the later games doesn't mean much considering you end up with 200 million for no reason, but in the old days like Tekken 5 and 6, you were scraping by barely to get anything, so having a full customization outfit was a big deal back in Tekken 6 versus in the later games. Before we move on, I want to give a little advice for playing Tekken Force Mode to ease the process. The first is pick up any loot items you get, and you should get some for just clearing stages and even dying at times. But every now and then, always change your customization for meta. This is because the items you get dropped will have effects to them, like fire damage, more health, more chance for items to drop, more damage, and a whole bunch of other things. So take advantage of that, and you might look really stupid while playing Tekken Force, but trust me, you are optimizing the experience to get through it faster. Also, for some reason, Anna's stage is the only stage in all the scenario campaign where you get the privilege to play as Nancy, and I would highly recommend taking advantage of that because my goodness, is Nancy fun AF to play. Now let's talk about Tag 2, and unfortunately there's even less to talk about with Tag 2 as pretty much every unlockable in this game is purely cosmetic, as all the characters that were quote unquote unlockable are just paid DLC. But the cosmetics are a lot of drops that you get through just playing the game and grinding out treasure chests. And there is a lot, and I mean a lot, of cosmetics in this game. Tag 2, while it is a highly controversial game, it was praised heavily for its super flexible and top tier customization. Probably the best game when it came to customization, just with how creative and interesting you can get with it. It's really sad they didn't carry this on into later games. Every character has a few small items that are character exclusive to them, but majority of the unlockables are generic, which means anyone in the cast can use them. The most interesting kind of sorta unlockable is with the combat mode. You see, in Tag 2, there is Mokujin and combat. Originally, combat, like in Tekken 4, was just Mokujin but a robot. But because both these characters are in the same game, they had to change combat to be a different character. And his entire moveset is actually based around a game mode called Fight Lab, where you play as combat and you do these tests. And the tests are based around core game mechanics. And there are 5 stages in Fight Lab, each stage explaining a specific mechanic. The later you go on, the more advanced the mechanic you are dealing with, which starts from just basic generic movements to learning high, mids, and lows, all the way to using tag assault combos. I think the idea behind this game mode was to teach new players how to play fighting games. However, it does it in a very strange and poor way, and it really doesn't help that this is Tekken Tag 2, the most complicated Tekken in Tekken history, no doubt about it. Every time you complete a stage, you will get a grade and combat points, or research points I should say, and these go into getting additional moves to use and or replace. It basically allows you to make your own character without the character creation part and kind of just messing around with different fighting styles and movesets and whatnot. So for example, if you ever wanted to do Demo Man and Electric at the same time for whatever reason, Fight Lab Combat is the perfect character for you. Majority of the attacks are accessible from the start and just require you to have enough fight points, and every time you win or complete a stage, you should have enough research points to pretty much get any move you want. The exception to this rule is the limited moves. Each stage will allow you to gain access to specific powerful moves, and some are locked behind a grade, which you can only use once you have completed all 5 stages of combat mode at least once. The stages separate these specific attacks into categories, so you can kind of pick one special move per stage move, I guess. And if you want a specific move, you will have to get a S tier to acquire all of the ones in a specific stage. But if you don't care about that move that requires an S rank, then I wouldn't worry about it. It's not really worthwhile, in my opinion, unless you really want that move. Along the way, you will get some customization options, though I don't know if it's any specific ones. I think it's random. But what you are guaranteed is data mode, which basically allows you to pick and create different fighting style variations. So if you want to have one variation of combat where he has Demo Man and another where he has Hell Sweep, you can swap out the data modes to your liking if you want to try out different variations and combinations, which is really cool. Now, again, I think it is really limited with the amount of attacks that are available, and I don't think any of the DLC characters' attacks will be in there. But there is a large variety of good attacks in there, so I'm sure you could make a pretty powerful character if you knew what you were doing. And if there was a meta character built for combat, I would not be generally surprised there either. Although I wasn't able to find many good bound options, although I believe if you get a S rank on one of the stages, you can get down forward 1-2, which is a really good bound in this game. That's really all for Tag 2, unfortunately. There is apparently some generic customization unlockables tied to specific ranks, but the problem is with Tekken Tag 2's unlock system, it doesn't really tell you what exactly you got. It kind of just tells you got a customization item. So I have no idea what those specific items even would be. And even then, the online forums don't even tell you what those items are. So I have no idea if this is true or not. And some of them are tied to online ranks, apparently requiring you to get to warrior, but I was unable to test this since I don't have access to online mode, and I really don't want to reach warrior in Tekken Tag online on an emulator. It's just not worth my time. So if you got this way back in the day or know what I'm talking about, let us know what that item might be in the comments. Now let's move on to Tekken 7, which is also pretty depressing with the unlockables, but I think it does a little better when it comes to raw unlockables than Tag 2, which really isn't saying much. So Tekken 7 has the Ghost Battle Farm Cosmetics unlockable. However, it also has title cards you could unlock, and some of them are actually pretty challenging to get, and some are outright unobtainable through regular means. For example, winning 3 online tournaments is kind of a pain in the ass, considering no one wants to play Tekken 7, and even when people did, nobody played the tournament mode. I probably got into under 10 of them in the 7 years I played the game. There is good news, however, if you want to save a lot of time and not deal with a lot of bullshit, as I should say. As if you end up playing 2,000 matches, offline or online, you will unlock all default vanilla unlockables. All the cosmetics, all the title cards, everything before Eliza's DLC you can unlock by just playing 2,000 matches. Why they added this in the game? I have absolutely no idea. Probably for lazy fuckers to not actually play and enjoy the content because they know the content was absolutely garbage. So they did you a solid there. Unfortunately, this rule did not apply to anything after the vanilla patch, so every DLC character and, you know, any title card and thing like that. So if you do end up playing offline in this game, I'd only play the DLC characters to save yourself the most time and farm their unlockables while you just unlock everyone else's later on. One little tip I'll give for treasure battle mode to make it as brain dead as possible is find a spammable knockdown move. For example, with Paul, down 1+2 will knock them down, and the AI has a really hard time with Oki and wake up situations, so you can kind of take advantage of that. There's also the classic meme with Katarina where you spam the 3 button to get the free win in treasure battle mode. It doesn't really matter who you pick as long as the character you're using has something spammable the AI doesn't know how to deal with. It will carry you up to any rank you want in treasure battle mode, which is why treasure battle mode was not taken seriously at all. Also, if you want the best chance at any loot for any character, fight the treasure battle bosses. There are 4 of them. One of them is Jin, which is just a little stronger and doesn't look any different. Ascended Heihachi, which is a stronger version of Heihachi. Devil Kazuya, which is a stronger version of Kazuya, and of course Devil Kazumi, who is just the boss version of Kazumi. Sometimes instead of a boss battle, you will get a regular fight, but with a specific condition. There's 3 you could potentially get. One is double damage, another is double the speed, and the last one is aerial damage only, where the only damage you can inflict is when the opponent is airborne. So anything after a launcher basically will do damage and nothing else. It's also really important to note that getting either a great or perfect on one of the rounds will grant you an additional chest, which makes the hardest unlockable, surprisingly, again, the Tekken Bowl title cards, specifically Master of the Iron Pin and Tekken Bowling God Prime. For Master of the Iron Pin, you have to get a bowling score of 300, which is basically a perfect bowling game. This is just insufferable of an unlockable to get, and you do not get a freebie pass with the 2000 win freebie. You have to play Tekken Bowling mode to unlock this special title. And over the entirety of playing Tekken 7, I've seen maybe 1 or 2 people ever show this off. It's kind of a flex to have because nobody wants to play Tekken Bowl, let alone get a score of fucking 300. It is just insufferable. For Tekken Bowl God Prime, you have to reach frame 50 in strike mode. Strike mode is basically survival mode for bowling, where you have 5 bowling balls which act as lives. Every time you get a strike, you will end up in the purple mode with Heihachi pins, and if you get a strike again, you will get an extra life. Otherwise, you will be punished with a random spare challenge. Failing to strike will also make you lose a ball life, and you have to make it to frame 50 with these conditions, which again is maybe even more insufferable for just how long you have to survive and how many more strikes you have to land. To be fair, it doesn't have to be 10 in a row, but the fact that it is such a high number is extremely obnoxious. So the $1 million question asks, how hard is it to get a strike in Tekken Bowling mode? It really depends on the character you select and a few other specific factors like where you position yourself and how much strength you throw into it. Unfortunately, I think there is a bit of RNG, especially with the regular pins, which are harder to deal with than the Heihachi pins, because the Heihachi pins are a lot bigger with their hitbox, so it's a lot easier to get consistent strikes, unlike the regular pins. While I was not able to get a score of 300, I was able to get above 200 very consistently with Armor King by going to the right edge of the screen, aiming towards the left a bit, and not going to the maximum full power. And that's because if you do, it will go so fast that the bowling pins will not knock down the other pins, which is essential for getting strikes. There is also rewards for 100 and 200 pins that you can also flex. So commit to an entire game to at least get one of the title cards. Now we finally talk about Tekken 8. And unfortunately here, it's literally impossible to not talk about customization. It's kind of the only like actual unlockables you can get outside of title cards and whatnot. Same stuff can be applied for Tekken 7. So yeah, we're kind of in the world of no more raw regular unlockables anymore. Nothing in Tekken 8 is inherently that special to unlock. In terms of title cards, pretty much everything is character specific. So like doing a combo challenge with a character, winning 50 games, clearing their arcade mode. If you do that with every single character, you'll pretty much have 95% of the title cards and stuff in the game. There's a handful of exceptions. Completing the story modes will unlock you stuff. I guess you could say the hardest is, or one of them, is getting the secret ending in the regular story mode, which is where you let Kazuya win the final part of the final battle. You'll get the despair title, which is kind of cool to flex. Some people would argue it's probably the destruction title, and this also comes with a couple title cards, borders, and stuff like that. And you can obtain this by getting the God of Destruction title, either online or offline. Because you can get it offline, it's way easier. It's just a kind of monotonous grind. You can go into Ghost Battle and just, spam a couple attacks and get like perfects every time, and you could achieve this really easily. If this was locked behind online mode, this would easily be the hardest thing to unlock, but because you can get it offline, it is just that much easier to obtain. Also, every character in the Super Ghost Battle mode has a unlockable alternate costume, but these are extremely boring. They're pretty much just less closed versions of current default models, and it's pretty much an excuse for waifu mains to have a more down bad variant of the already down bad default costume they wear. Not to point you guys out, but the real rarest or most difficult things to unlock are sunsetted content or removed from the game items. So basically your season pass cosmetics, normal and premium, I'd argue, are the hardest because they become unobtainable after an X period of time. For the season passes, you obviously have to grind them out. So for example, something like Kazuya's Yeezy boosts would be one of the hardest things to unlock in the game, because you have a limited amount of time to obtain them, and chances are the promotion will not come back. But something I'd argue to be even rarer than these level 60 season pass items are the secret promos they have. Very few people know this, but during Evo Tekken 8, for about 2 months, there was a hidden King NPC, and if you beat that King NPC, you would get the Chipotle merch, and best of all, the epic Chipotle coin. As of making this video, there is a current promotion going on, but I'm not sure when it's going to end. But there is a special Harada and Heihachi NPC, and if you beat them, you'll get a 30th anniversary hit effect. But if you beat the Heihachi NPC, you will get a bunch of really, and I mean really cool stuff. Dragon masks, Suzaku masks, a healing staff, and another small thing. It's not entirely known how long this one will last, but the Chipotle event lasted about 4 months, to give you an idea. Permanently removed from the game, so kind of the only time to obtain this stuff. So technically, by that logic, it's the hardest just because you have to play at a specific time, but it's really easy to do, so it's more like the rarest thing rather than the hardest. I mean, Tekken 8's unlockables and things you can obtain that are not available from the start are just dramatically different compared to what the legacy games had to offer. I didn't really want to count these sunsetted cosmetic items, but again, Tekken 8 really doesn't have a lot of unlockable content like the previous games did. And anything that costs quote unquote fight coins in this game, you can basically obtain by wiping your ass on the toilet, as you get so much money for literally losing. At least in the previous games like Tekken 5 and 6, you really had to work for your cosmetics because you just made so much less money. I remember being 9 years old during Tekken 6, and it took me forever to get this really dope King mask because 2 million coins was a big fucking deal back in Tekken 6. If you made it to the end of the video, then thank you so much for watching. This became way more of a nightmare than I thought it initially would be. And while I had a lot of fun, there were definitely some very frustrating moments along this journey, like Double Within. My God, you really don't want to play that mode. It's just so horrendous to play. But you know, if I missed anything in this video, let me know in the comments and I will do my best to add it in a pinned comment so we can have as accurate of information as possible for the unlocks. Take care and I'll see you soon.